Is this the year Austin Riley wins an MVP? Let's talk about it. Yes, come on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, February 4th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And as we are getting to just a couple weeks from pitchers and catchers reporting, I'm trying to take the next little bit of time and preview what the projection systems think that these players are going to do in 2025. Because whether or not a lot of Braves fans want to talk about it and acknowledge it, this is one of the best rosters in baseball, right? PECOTA, the projection system for wins and losses on Fangraphs, on Baseball Prospectus, it came out on Monday, and Atlanta's projected to have the second best record in baseball at 92-70. It's better than anybody in the American League. I believe they're winning the East by 4 or 5 games in that projection, easily making the postseason. It is one of the best rosters in baseball. And in Position Player Preview Week, a big reason that this roster is projected to be so good and this team is projected to win so many games are the guys we're going to talk about today. Austin Riley, Matt Olson, and Marcell Ozuna. Let's start with Riley, because to me, this is the one that I think, more so than the rest, this is the one that I think can take the largest leap into, I'm going to go from stardom to superstardom. I legitimately think, I've gone on the record for this before, I think that Austin Riley, any year now, and I think this could be the year, could take that leap to MVP caliber territory. He's finished in the MVP voting, right? 21, 22, and 23. Those 3 years, he finished with down ballot votes, right? A 7th place, a 6th place, and a 7th place. It's after he cemented himself as an everyday player and the starter at third base. And his combined statistics for Austin Riley in those 3 years was a 286 average with a 354 on base and a 525 slug. He had 108 home runs in those 3 seasons, so an average of 36 a year. He had 297 RBI, an average of 99 a year. He won 2 Silver Sluggers. He was twice named an All-Star, but he hasn't quite taken that leap into superstardom. Obviously, last year, production was down a little bit, just like everybody else's was, right? Production was down before he had the injury and missed the rest of the season. Riley only played in 110 games last year. Hit 256, which from when he became a full-time player in 2021 to now, that was the worst season that he's had. He did, when he was playing some left field in 2020, that shortened year, he did bat 239, right? And in 2019, when he was playing everywhere, left, right, first, third, he did bat 226. But since he became the guy at third base, 2024 was the statistical worst year of his career from both an average standpoint and then obviously because of the shortened year from a rate standpoint, right? Again, 19 home runs, 56 RBI, batted 256 with a 783 OPS. It was still a 115 OPS plus. Austin Riley was still an above average hitter, but significantly a step back from his previous years of a 135, a 140, a 130, the OPS pluses he was putting up in those MVP finish years. And the projection systems, I feel, don't really know what to do with Austin Riley. They think he's going to rebound a little bit, but not as good as those previous 3 years. And again, Reminder, these projection systems, we're using Steamer and Zips, both from Fangraphs. These are based on prior performance. So that tough 2024 year is going to impact these projections. Plus, these projections are inherently a little bit conservative, right? Projection systems are always conservative. But these two projections have him playing either 140 or 150 games, right? Zip says 140, Steamer says 150. We'll talk about how ridiculous the games played thing is when we get to Matt Olson, right? Zips has Austin Riley better from a batting average and from an average standpoint, right? 275 average, 343 on base, 499 slug. Again, that's behind what he did in those 3 years, 21, 22, and 23. But that is better in every regard from what he did last season. Zips has Austin Riley with 29 homers and 88 RBI, which if Austin Riley finished close to a full season with 88 RBI, I do think we would say, based on where we expect him to hit, third, fourth, somewhere like that, that would be a disappointment. Again, those 3 seasons he had where he was so good and got MVP votes, 107 RBI, 93 RBI, and 97 RBI. So he was up there flirting with 100 every year. His home run totals, 33, 38, 37. So to finish with 29 homers and 88 RBI, I think we would all say would be a disappointment. Obviously, it's an improvement over the pace he was on last year, but it would be a disappointment for Austin Riley hitting at the top of his lineup like we expect him to do, batting third or so, especially if Jurickson Profar, with his high on base, is one of the guys ahead of Riley, right? Steamer is a little bit more pessimistic on Riley from a batting average from a slash line perspective, but they're more bullish on him from a counting statistics. And I don't quite know how that happens, full disclosure, but for Steamer, they have Riley playing 150 games. But he's only batting 267 with a 336 on base and a 487 slug. All of those are 7 to 15 points lower than the Zips projection. Now, maybe it's the extra 10 games. I don't know. But they have him, Steamer has Riley outproducing homers and RBI. They have him at 32 home runs and 100 RBI. Again, in 150 games. Maybe it's those extra 10 games, but 12 RBI in 10 games doesn't really, the math's not mathing on that. 3 home runs in 10 games, maybe, sure, you have a hot week. But I think we can safely say if Austin Riley, even if you take the better of those two projections, if Austin Riley finished with 32 homers and 11 RBI, and 100 RBI, 32 homers and 100 RBI, that would probably be a disappointment because the lowest, 2021, he only had 33 homers. The 100 RBI I think is fine, but the power feels like it should be able to come for Austin Riley better than that. I legitimately think maybe this is the year now that I believe they've had their second kid now, so that dad string's fully in. I legitimately think Austin Riley has what it takes to be a 40 homer bat. And 30, 35 homers is great, right? You would be thrilled with 30-something homers from any third baseman in baseball. But if Riley could give you 40 homers, I think the impact that has on the Braves lineup and everything is so much better. Those 3 hot years that he had, he was sitting somewhere between 5 and 5.5% on a home run rate and a walk rate hovering around 8%. Strikeout rate was 25, 24, 25%, something like that. If Riley can get that home run rate to the 5.5 or even closer to that 5.8, 6%, I think a 40 homer year's completely within reach, and it would do wonders for the ceiling of this lineup if Austin Riley can produce long balls to that sort of frequency. And talking about a guy who can produce long balls, in just a second, let's talk about Matt Olson and how incredibly variable his production is from year to year, but why this year might be a time to take over on all of his projections. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They get the links in the episode description. Promo code BRAVES. New customers get a free play and up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. I thoroughly enjoy this because the way that this works, Underdog, any sport that you're interested in, whether it's NBA, the Super Bowl coming up, obviously baseball, all of that stuff, you go in and you build your own lineup of statistical projections, and you pick higher or lower on what you think these guys are going to do on these stats. Maybe it's for an individual game. You think Riley's going to have, more than 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBI. So you take higher. You build your lineup depending on the guys you choose and the projections that you select. You can win up to 1,000 times your money. It's available just about everywhere in Braves country with the exception of Austin Riley's Mississippi. So hate it for you, buddy. But Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, all of that is available. Again, Underdog Fantasy, links in the episode description, promo code BRAVES. New customers get a free play and up to $1,000 in bonus cash with their first deposit. Check out Underdog Fantasy today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about the Bash brothers, the projections for the power hitters in this roster in 2025. And Matt Olson, the big question here, which Matt Olson are you going to get? Because I don't know if you've sat down and looked at Matt Olson's career numbers for the last 4 seasons, but there is a trend. And the trend is he does a lot better in odd number years than he does in even number years, okay? So the last 4 years, 2021, his final season in Oakland, he was an all-star. He also was an 8th place finisher in MVP voting. He hit 271, 371, 540 with 39 homers and 111 RBI. It was an OPS plus of 153, meaning he was 53% better than the average hitter in baseball. Okay? He gets traded to the Atlanta Braves, and that first year with a new team, a lot of players don't quite produce like you expect. 2022 for Matt Olson, not a bad year, but he's down on a lot of the numbers. He only hits 240. His OPS is 802, so it's 109 points lower than the previous year. 34 homers, 103 RBI. Respectable, still back from the previous number. He gets a ton of doubles, like 44 doubles, just racking up doubles that year. It comes out to a 120 OPS plus. So from 153 to 120. He's not an all-star. He doesn't finish in MVP voting, doesn't win awards, any of that stuff. Then 2023, in what was an amazing year for the Atlanta Braves offense, Matt Olson just destroyed the league. Okay? He hits 283. It's the best batting average of his career by 12 points, right? 389 on base, a National League leading 604 slug. He leads all of baseball with 54 homers, leads all of baseball with 139 RBI. It's a 164 OPS plus. Finishes 4th place finisher in MVP. He's an all-star. He's a silver slugger. That was the year, if you remember, the entire Braves starting infield made it. It was like, I believe it was Riley, Albies, Olson, Murphy, and Orlando Arcia for good measure. Like, the whole infield, they were never in the game all at the same time, but like the whole infield made the All-Star game that year. And then in 2024, Matt Olson drops back to that even number shenanigans, right? 247 with a 790 OPS, which was 12 points lower than what he put up in 22. It's a 118 OPS plus, so very close to that 120 he had in 2022. He hits 29 homers, which is tied for his career low in a full season. 98 RBI, which in this Braves lineup feels really hard to do, but obviously so many injuries and everything. But there's reason for hope here. And there's reason for me to think that the projection systems are way too low on Matt Olson based on the odd year trend, which I don't really think is statistically significant, but we're going to tell ourselves it is, and how he finished last year. Okay. So Zips and Steamer, one, don't have Matt Olson playing 162 games, which is odd because Matt Olson has not missed a game since May of 2021. He's played in 162 straight games in 3 straight seasons. Okay? But they have him playing somewhere between 150 and 152 games. And Zips and Steamer are very close on this, okay? He's hitting either 251 or 252, depending on which projection system you look at. Both of them think he'll have exactly a 345 on base. And his slugging's either going to be a 482 or a 483. One says 32 homers and 101 RBI. One says 33 homers and 99 RBI. That's like I've never seen projections this close to one another from 2 different projection systems. So they think they figured Matt Olson out. But we know odd year Matt Olson, just like how odd year Ozzy Albies is like Wolverine and you cannot hurt that dude. And then even year Ozzy Albies, he gets injured and misses a bunch of time. For some reason, odd year Matt Olson is one of the greatest power hitters in baseball. And he's like completely unstoppable. Again, 2019, 139 OPS. 2017, it was only 60 games. He had a 166 OPS. This has gone back his entire major league career. He has done really well in odd numbered years. Again, a 148 OPS plus in 2021. All-Star, 8th place MVP finisher. 2023, 164 OPS plus. Leads the league in homers and RBI. 4th place MVP finisher. Silver Slugger, All-Star. How he finished last year, I think, gives you some hope that he figured out whatever the slump was. He's always been a little streaky, right? But the way he finished the year, 63 games, which to me feels enough to be statistically significant, right? Like the 2020 season, we acknowledge if guys had a good or a bad year. We say it's a little bit fluky, it's only 60 games. But at the same time, I do think you can learn a lot from a guy in 60 games. Matt Olson's last 63 games, shout out to friend of the program, Chris Clegg, of the Dynasty Dugout, for having all these stats for us, by the way. In the last 63 games, Matt Olson hit 289 with a 384 on base and a 565 slug. And he hit 16 home runs. He averaged a home run every 4 games for the final 2 months of the season. Now, I've thrown a lot of numbers at you today, but that is a better batting average than Matt Olson put up in 2023. That is 30 point lower on base, and the slugging's lower than what he put up in 23. But that is a better batting average than 2023 when he destroyed baseballs and led all of baseball in home runs. And to top it off, it wasn't like fluky stuff. His average exit velocity, not 90th percentile, just the average, was 91 miles an hour. Okay? Reminder, to be a hard hit ball, it has to be 95. His hard hit rate during that stretch, 48%. Almost every other batted ball was a hard hit ball. His barrel rate was 16%. His contact rate was like 79% and change, like rounded to 80%. So he was making a ton of contact, and he was hitting the ball incredibly hard. And if 90% of that carries over into 2025, then we're all going to look like geniuses for saying to our friends, hey, it's an odd year. Watch for Matt Olson to be a juggernaut in 2025. In just a second, let's talk about Marcell Ozuna, because he might factor into some of the bench and depth conversations as well. Defensive depth. We'll get to that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today on Tuesday the 4th. We're talking about the Brash brothers, Matt Olson, Marcell Ozuna, Austin Riley, and what to expect from them from the projection systems this year, and whether we think they can go over or under. And Marcell Ozuna is a really interesting one because we all remember how awful he was to start 2023. He was batting like 083. He was atrocious. And when he went to Miami, he got to sleep in his own bed. He got to just destroy baseballs in that ballpark. I think he had 4 home runs in a 3-game series. And since then, all the way through the end of last season, he's been a different dude, okay? So last year, plays a full season. First time in his career, not counting 2020, that he's played every single game, okay? His previous high was 159 games in 2017. He was in Miami. He was 26 years old at that time. He was still playing the outfield a lot. He even played some center field in 2017. That's how long it's been since Marcell Ozuna played a full season. But he hit .302 with a .378 on base and a .546 slug. 4th place finisher in MVP a year after Olson did that. He was an all-star. Finished with 39 home runs and 104 RBI. And if it wasn't for the fact that his slugging percentage was just cheeks the whole month of September, he'd have had a 40 home run season for the 2nd straight year. The projection systems, however, don't think that was legit. Okay? Both Zips and Steamer have him playing 150 games or less. Zips has him at 141 games. It's wild there. 258 average with a .333 on base and a .469 slug. So all of these are closer to his career numbers. Like, they're way off of last year, okay? He's a career .272 hitter. Believe it or not, Marcell Ozuna is a career .272 hitter, okay? But they have him hitting, again, Zips has him at .258, which would be 2021 and 2022 numbers. Like, better, slightly better than those, but those numbers for Marcell Ozuna, those awful years that we try to not think about for Marcell Ozuna. 29 homers and 88 RBI. Now, Steamer's a little bit more friendly to Marcell Ozuna, but 260, 331, 479 with 32 homers and 95 RBI. Just like Austin Riley, if Marcell Ozuna doesn't have 100 RBI, it's gonna be a disappointment. I think in this lineup, probably batting 5th, maybe batting 4th, depending. I don't know how they're going to configure this lineup. We'll have a whole show about this at some point in time. Once we get to the spring and we see the first time they have the whole squad out there, who bats where, we'll probably talk about it. But if Marcell Ozuna doesn't have 100 RBI, I think it's going to be a disappointment. And honestly, as a DH, if he doesn't have 30 home runs, if that projection of 29 home runs is accurate, I'm going to be disappointed as well. If you're not going to play the field, you got to hit for power. You got to hit home runs. 29 home runs and 88 to 95 RBI is probably a bit of a disappointment to me for Marcell Ozuna in 2025. Now, there is another situation I do think we need to talk about, because at the end of this, we've talked about, obviously, Riley and Olson. They're going to play every day as long as they're healthy, God willing, and the creek don't rise. But if one of them were to miss time, it's going to be really interesting to see what the Braves do. We saw this a little bit with Riley last year, right? But at third base, if Riley misses time, as of now, your only real backup on the roster is Luke Williams. He's played everywhere. Luke Williams has played shortstop. He's played first, second, third. He's played the outfield. He's probably the emergency third catcher. He's pitched before. He's done literally everything. If there's like a 2 or 3 day absence for Austin Riley, he tweaks an ankle, he has an abscessed tooth, something like that, paternity list, something like that, Luke Williams probably makes 2 or 3 starts. I do think the backup here is Nick Allen. He's got like 79 career innings at third between the minors and the majors. He's never really done it on a full-time regular basis. If there is an extended absence for Riley, that's where you see a roster move. Obviously, last year, Gio Urshela was picked up he was DFA'd by the Tigers. They picked him up. They stuck him in at third base. And defensively, he did fine. Something that Atlanta did down the stretch in Gwinnett was they had Nacho Alvarez working at third in case Gio Urshela got hurt. Especially after Whit Merrifield had that broken foot thing where it was painful for him to run and stuff. And if you were to lose Austin Riley for an extended absence, again, Nacho Alvarez is probably a guy they're going to consider calling up to play third base for 3 weeks or a month or whatever. And I'll remind you, he was a third baseman in college. Atlanta's trying to move him to shortstop. It's the thing that they've tried to do to get value out of some of these guys, right? He doesn't have the power profile for third, so they're trying to see if they can get the defense of shortstop and stick him in the lineup there. So short-term absence, it's probably Luke Williams. Maybe it's Nick Allen. Long-term absence, it's either an outside acquisition or it's Nacho Alvarez. First base is really interesting to me because the few times that Matt Olson has left games early, it didn't happen last year, but in previous years, Austin Riley would sometimes kick over and play first base and they'd put somebody else in at third. You saw Luke Williams play some first base, but every single time I have gone to sit in the press box at Truist Park during warm-ups on the field, Marcell Ozuna is taking reps at first base. In spring training, they let him play first base in some spring training games, right? There was, I want to say it was going into 23 or last year. He was traveling on the road trips where you have to send 2 or 3 veterans. He was one of the veterans traveling and playing first base on a road trip when they would go to Fort Myers to play the Red Sox or Lakeland to play the Tigers or wherever. And if you have a short-term absence, it's either going to be Luke Williams or maybe it's Marcell Ozuna. The issue that Alex Anthopoulos told us with Marcell Ozuna defensively wasn't athleticism and range. It wasn't tracking balls. It was his throwing arm. What better way to mitigate a throwing arm issue than to put a guy at first base? So I'm really curious to see what happens in that situation. I don't want it to happen. I don't want to know what the option is without Matt Olson. I want Matt Olson to play every game. I want him to be the modern day Iron Man and just pull a Cal Ripken and play every day for 6 years. That'd be awesome. But if he misses 2 games, right? He gets in a minor car wreck on the way to the ballpark and they got to hold him out of the lineup to check and make sure he's okay or something. Is it Marcell Ozuna playing first base? Is it Luke Williams playing first base? Because if it's Ozuna, you can put somebody like Ronald Acuna Jr. or Jurickson Profar at DH and put Jared Kelenic in the field. And you have to think it's probably a little better from an offensive perspective to have Kelenic enter the lineup than it is to have Luke Williams. Really curious to see what happens there. If it's a long-term absence, Garrett Cooper is in the organization. Okay? He's played a ton of first base in his career. He did it at the major league level last year. Not a lot. He got 7 plate appearances. But he has spent plenty of time in the majors in his career. And Garrett Cooper is probably the first guy up to fill in at first base if something happens to Matt Olson. We saw they had Yuli Gurriel in the minors last year. They didn't need him. And like the day of or the day before the postseason eligibility deadline, they traded him for cash to the Kansas City Royals. And the Royals had him in the majors like 2 days later, playing, I think either first or third. I don't remember exactly what it was, first or third or whatever. But the point is, they had Yuli Gurriel playing in the majors. Atlanta stashed him all year and Gwinnett never needed him because Olson's not missed a game again since 2021. So, curious to see what happens there. But to me, these 3 guys in this show, they have more so than anybody else, they have the potential to make this lineup one of the best in baseball if they can hit some of those power numbers. If Riley can get to 40 home runs, if Olson can get to 45 or 50 or even 40 home runs, really. If Ozuna can be a 4,100 guy again, these 3 guys can drive in a lot of runs for the Atlanta Braves. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode. We'll be back tomorrow talking middle infield, Ozzy Albies, Orlando Arcia, some of the other options behind Arcia like Nacho Alvarez, like Nick Allen, figuring out is there a way to not have Orlando Arcia all year or what's expected of him from these projection systems. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.